ladies and gentlemen. We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, you guys, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve, so you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Before I bring my guest up, weekly reminder, the Freight Coach newsletter dropped this morning. All right. So if you want to get in on that action, go to thefreightcoach.com. It will auto prompt you to register for it there. I don't auto sign anybody up. I'm not going to sell up my contact list or anything like that. I believe in earning all of that stuff. So if you want to jump over there and do that, hit it up, you guys. It's just once a week. It's going to have rates in there, diesel prices, just industry insight, because I only know freight, guys, so I'm not out here trying to tell you to try and be a life coach or anything like that. But with that being said, you guys, we're back to talking about more safety and compliance, you guys. And it's such a major part of it. And, you know, some of you brokers out there who listen to the show might not understand why what's the point of it. But it's very relevant for you to have a very thorough understanding of all facets of your job. So with that being said, I have Mr. Sam Watts with Wattsman's Diesel House on the show today. Sam, thank you so much for joining me. Oh, your mic. Yeah. Not too. It's all good, man. We live in reality here, dude. Things happen.
Is this any better? Can you?
Yeah, there we go. Now we got you.
I had the ear or Bluetooth, and apparently they just died on me. I thought I charged them, but I guess not. So, anyways, Bluetooth gone.
Dude, that is not a problem at all.
That's the joy of live right there. The joy of live. Okay. All right. I'm back. Here we go.
Sam, that's just the reality. That ironically is how I built my entire brand. I'm just like keeping it real with people about literally everything and not trying to shoot for perfect or anything like that. And I'm actually glad that happened, because I hear that, now that I have a fancy camera and mic and everything, I didn't always have it that, I've always had it that way. It never started on my cell phone and doing everything else. So I'm glad that happened there, man. Yeah.
No, I've got a terrible webcam on my laptop. So whenever I do this kind of stuff, I'm on my cell phone, because this is what makes me pretty. And but with that, like, I have to kind of rely on some other stuff, and sometimes it just does not work. But anyways, no, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be here.
No, absolutely, Sam. And so dude, how'd you get your start in freight? What brought you into this industry?
My father, quite honestly, as a lot of us really have experienced, it's a family thing. And he started off driving way back in the 70s, just helping out some local guys, and ended up in it, and like I've said numerous times, and a lot of people, like, this is an industry where either you get in for like a year or less and you realize you don't want it, or you're in for life. And, quite honestly, I've been in it for life. I've been doing actively in trucking now for almost 25 years, doing everything that you can really imagine when it comes to trucking. I started off washing them, which, was a great thing for a teenager. Then I started cleaning up the insides, which is sometimes horrific for a teenager. But then started doing maintenance stuff to them, worked in warehousing, billing, recruiting, operations. And now I'm in safety, and I absolutely love it.
So what happened to make you go out and start your business, right? I always love asking entrepreneurs this, right? Because we all have that one thing where it's like, all right, enough's enough. I'm going to go do this on my own. So what was it for you, man? What happened where you're just like, dude, I got to go out and start my own company?
What happened is I was noticing. So to back up just a tad here, the FMCSA, we all know the FMCSA. A lot of these small carriers assume that the FMCSA is not going to mess with them because they're small. They're off the radar. They don't notice. But that is absolutely not true at all. So a lot of these small carriers, and I completely get it because I've been a part of small carriers, they don't pay attention to safety because they don't have the capabilities to do it. They want to focus on operations, which I get. Okay, operations is where you make the money, but they were neglecting safety. And so what prompted me to say, hey, you should do this, is I saw small carriers getting hit with violations and fines and getting shut down or losing insurance or things like that, because they weren't focused on safety, because they didn't want to, they didn't know how to, or they, were just ignoring stuff that they didn't know that they were ignoring. It's one of those things. They didn't know what they didn't know, because a lot of small carriers start off with as an owner operator who did good, bought a second truck that did good, bought a third, and they just slowly built it up. Well, they didn't know what they didn't know when it came to safety. And you can do stuff as a single owner operator that maybe you could slide by and it wouldn't really affect, or you're running under someone else's authority and they're taking care of it. But now that you have your own legitimate business, you are having to do some of the safety stuff. And I saw that they were not doing that. And so that's what prompted me to start Wattsman Diesel House, to say, okay, keep doing what you're doing at operations. You're very good at making money. You're very good at finding freight. That's great. But bring me in and I'll keep your safety and compliance in check. Because if you don't have someone just keeping an eye on it, it could get away from you very, very quickly. So that's why I started Wattsman Diesel House, to help out smaller carriers. Our bread and butter is 30 trucks and less, but we do help out carriers with more. But the guys that can't afford a full-time safety guy, they bring me in. And quite honestly, they don't need a full-time safety guy. It's smaller carriers. You don't need a full safety guy, but you have a guy like me to watch that safety compliance, so that if something is getting out of hand, or, you're getting to close to thresholds when in the basic categories, I can at least say, hey, we've got an issue here. Let's cut it off at the pass before it becomes, a bigger issue that you have to deal with.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly it. Like, I talk about that so often, right? Like, there's no playbook to entrepreneurship, right? Like, there's no list or checklist of like, hey, you need to have all of this stuff, but at the same time, you need to be very aware of what could possibly affect your business out there. And that's what at this point, man, this is one of the main driving forces behind this show. I want that driver who's listening to this show right now or in the future to be like, I need to work on that. I need to fix that. Because again, like you said, you only know what you know when you're going on out there in the industry and you're trying to build your business up. And I wanted to build a blueprint or a playbook per se for people to follow, where they could come in and listen to the show. It's not going to be behind a paywall. I'm not taking anybody's information and then peppering them with sign up for this or sign up for that or anything like that. I just want it to be value and information driven first by people who are from the industry and who aren't just out here trying to take advantage of, some people who are in a bind, right? And it's like, I love hearing that, because you're right, man. Not everybody needs a full-time safety guy, but they need a fractional safety officer, or, that's another thing too that I've kind of been exposed to in the business world is fractional executives, fractional CFOs, and fractional this role and that role. And that's what a lot of individuals need to look into to make sure, because what made you successful as a 1 or a 2 truck operation is not going to get it done when you're 5, 10, 20 trucks and everything else. So it's like being aware of that and starting to implement a lot of these processes and procedures early on. It's a lot easy to do it when you don't need it than it is to when you're humming along with 10, 15 people and all of a sudden you got a whole culture to try and shift and say, hey, we're going to start doing this now.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. I mean, the word fractional has become very popular in the last 5 years. And I got a good friend of mine who kind of is trying to write the playbook on fractional stuff. But yeah, that's exactly why I focus on the smaller guys, because that's the majority of trucking companies out there. Anyone who's been in the freight industry knows that these small truck lines are the majority of the trucks out there. So they are definitely very important to the industry. And like I said, they don't need a full-time safety guy, but they need someone to keep an eye on stuff. And that's what I help them do. I try to get them to the point, or, I try to make sure they don't get to the point of where they have an issue going on. I like to think of myself as a smoke detector. Okay. I try to figure out where that smoke is before it becomes an actual fire, because once you get to the fire stage, that's when it gets really important or really expensive to fix the things. And you might be past the point of no return with some things that you have issues with. So I like to think of myself as that smoke detector going, okay, yeah, we got some smoke over here. Let's go put that out. Okay, nothing happened there. We caught it. We're good to go. Oh, we got some smoke over here. Now let's make sure we keep that down before you come back and your house is on fire, because then you might be in big trouble.
So I think what initially caught my eye about what you got going on is a lot of the safety videos that you post out there. I think you just put one out there yesterday about, road rage or something like that. And the dude was throwing something at the truck on the side of in the other lane and everything like that. So is that what's the main driving for? Is it more of an awareness thing than anything, where you're like, hey guys, because you did put that out there in the post too, like if you're finding yourself in this, like get off at the next exit and all that stuff as well.
Yeah. I unfortunately, I have seen drivers lose their jobs because they couldn't control their emotions. And I get it. Okay. I've driven out there on the interstate system. Like, you've driven out on the interstate. I mean, we've all driven, we've all experienced road rage. But it's literally a no-win situation. If someone makes you angry out there, no matter what you do to them, you are not going to win. Even if you got cut off, you're 100% in the right. Any retaliatory type behavior it's not going to end well for you. So I always said to all the drivers that I watch is just say, you don't even have to pull over. Just slow down. If you're doing 65, slow down to 60. Just let them get out of the view, and then bump it back up to 60. Like, just control your emotions. But sometimes that's extremely hard to do. And one of the things that I like to do, I went to school. I thought maybe I could escape the trucking industry for a minute there, because I went to school for broadcasting and communications. And I eventually found my way back. But I like to incorporate that education into what I do with trucking. So one of the things I do is, for all the trucks that I watch, I put out a weekly safety update video of just what we do. Is we go over any sort of regulatory issues that come up, or just some reminders like, hey guys, I've noticed an uptick on PC use, personal conveyance use. Here's how you should be using that. Here's how you cannot use that. And just do some reminders for them, because, a lot of times guys do stuff that they think is right, but it's actually not right. And again, I want to try to cut that off at the pass before we get to an issue. But then we watch a dash cam video of different situations. And one of them is sometimes, I got a ladybug flying around me here. One of them is, here's a road rage incident. Now here's an accident situation. It's not all just the big crash stuff that people, seem to want to watch, but it's all those near misses that a lot of times, like, here's distracted driving. This is why you cannot do that, because yes, we got away with it here, but that could have been horrific had it actually happened. So yeah, I like to point out that kind of stuff and just coach the drivers on what they should be doing and what they can do differently. I got one coming out tomorrow, a little sneak preview for all the watchers here about crosswinds. We've all experienced that. You drive out west of the Mississippi, you're going to experience crosswinds. What can you do to avoid that? And sometimes it's literally just getting off the road. Like, sometimes you just can't avoid it. You just got to shut her down until that wind stops. But I like to show situations and how best to navigate those, because every driver faces those every day, and they're very important to know what to do in those situations.
So when you're working with your people, man, like, what's something that you see it might seem obvious to an experienced safety professional out there, but it's a quick fix that maybe somebody who's listening to this right now could do? What's kind of that first thing where it's like a constant throughout a lot of the people that you're working with?
Driver qualification files. That's usually the first thing that I always ask guys with trucking carrier owners is, what do they look like? Because 90%, I don't have the exact percentage, but it's really high, don't have a complete driver qualification file. They have most of it, but they're always missing something out of there. So that's usually, when I go into a carrier, that's usually the first thing that I talk to them about is, let me see your driver qualification files. What do they look like? Because in all honesty, and I really try not to use scare tactics, but that's what lawyers and insurance companies are going to look for. If your driver gets into an accident, the first thing a lawyer is going to want to see is, even if you're not at fault, is, what is a driver qualification file? Should that driver have been out on the road when they were on the road? Because if the carrier's not at fault, the lawyer, because there's lawyer, I've had lawyers come after companies I've worked with where the car that hit the truck, it flat out hit the truck. We had dash cam to prove it. The car didn't have a license and the driver didn't have a license. Like, he should not have been on the road at all, but yet he still crashed into our truck and they still came after us. And the one thing that the lawyer wanted to see was, dude, is that driver in our semi truck qualified to be on the road? Should he have been on the road? I mean, so this is what they look for. And, you know, as much as people don't like those driver or the attorneys that are involved in this, they're smart people. You got to give it to them. They're smart people. They know exactly what they're looking for, and they're very quick at wanting to get it. So when I go to a company, that's always the first thing. Let me see your driver qualification files. Should the driver be on the road? Does he have everything in there? And that's one thing that a lot of people have an idea about, but they usually do not have a complete driver qualification file. And if they do, if their driver qualifications look good, then I know we're dealing with a company that knows what they're doing. And that's usually is a little bit easier, and they usually have a lot more stuff, in order. So that's always the first thing I look at.
So when it comes to a driver qualification file, is that an oversight because that maybe they were an owner op and they added a second truck and they didn't know about that? Or is that, or have you seen cases where they're like, we're just trying to put bodies behind the wheel? We didn't necessarily look into that. Again, you don't have to out anybody, but like, what's the average there?
Yeah. So it both. It really is both. Yeah. Again, it goes back to that didn't know what you didn't know. I've seen where, the owner of a company, they've had, a number of trucks, and the owner didn't have a driver qualification file because, well, I'm the owner. I don't, this is my company. I'm like, you're still a driver under this authority. Like, you still need that. So it's a lot of times, I'll say the majority of them are not trying to scoot around the system. Like, they're not trying to cheat the system. It's just, a lot of it is they just didn't know what needs to be in there. Okay, we got the medical card, we got the driver's license, and that's it. Well, do you have the application? That's one thing that a lot of times they kind of overlook. Do you have the proof that the medical examiner they went to is actually on the registry for the FMCSA? I mean, there's a lot of those things that sometimes they just simply overlook. And it's not, I don't want to say it's not their fault. They're not trying to cheat anything. They just didn't know. But unfortunately for the FMCSA, DOT, all that stuff, they don't really, ignorance is bliss is not one of their sayings. It's one of those where you have to know that stuff. And that's where they reach out to people like me, because I can come in and say, hey, we need this, this, and this. It's not hard. It's not hard to get the stuff. It's just, you got to make sure you have it.
No, absolutely. And I think after you're aware of a lot of this is, because from there, it's like building a repeatable, scalable process at that point, right? So it's like having that stuff in line and, and I've gone through a lot of that in my business. There's some parallels here, right? Like, I didn't know I needed X, but now I do. So now I have that checklist that's out there of everything to follow, whether it's, depending on the state that you're operating, you might need a city business license and a state business license and all of that stuff that kind of comes along with it. But then again, it's building that out and then utilizing that as you grow and scale your company. And I think when it comes down to the safety and compliance aspect of it, it seems like a pretty cut and dry process that individuals should have. Do you have a framework that you follow, Sam, when you're working with any of your clients, or again, maybe somebody listening to this, they can start working on preparing, something like that for their company? Yeah.
So the nice thing with the FMCSA and DOT is they do have all this information readily available. This isn't a secret safety guide. We don't have a safety guide club where we have all this stuff and it's, hidden from, I mean, it's all public information. And so like when it comes to driver qualification files, you can literally Google that and the FMCSA checklist will pop up of what you need. And so you can literally, the FMCSA literally gives you the checklist and you just go through and check that off. Like I said, unfortunately, some guys don't know that they need the driver qualification file, or they figure, well, we've got enough in there. It's not that big of a deal. They might brush it off. But I mean, it's all readily available information. And there's, if you've ever seen, I call it the green book, the regulation book, it's, that thick. So, but again, you can buy it and just, I usually have a copy of it on my desk and you can go through it. A good friend of mine, has set up an app called eRegs that you can go, and it literally is an app on your phone that you can search for it and do all that good stuff with it. So, I mean, all this information is readily available. It's just a matter of actually going out and doing it. And again, a lot of these small carriers that I work with, the owners of them are driving themselves. So like when you're in the truck, you can't do all the business stuff that maybe you need to do. And so that's why they pass off some of these responsibilities to guys like me.
So how are you like what's a good idea for like a safety plan, right? Like and again, this might be just too much of an open-ended or a broad question, but I look at it as, I've been in situations before where, back in the day before everything was digital, we wanted, if somebody had high safer scores or whatever, they had to give us an actual action plan that they are following out there. Is that something that you are still seeing or working on with individuals? And, again, maybe they went through a string of a couple of bad hires, for example, and it increased their safety scores or whatever. Are you working with those carriers to create a plan to lower them and everything like that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's still, I mean, with the FMCSA, they have, excuse me, they have their satisfactory, conditional ratings, and then unsatisfactory. You fall into that conditional and unsatisfactory. That's when the fire, like I was talking about, that's when that's kind of starting. When you disregarded safety, or you maybe not even disregarded safety, but yeah, you just had a string of really bad luck and you just got popped every time you've had that bad luck, and then you get a conditional rating. That's when, you have to start building policies and procedures. You have to write the letter to the FMCSA saying, hey, this is what we're doing. But the one thing, that I really try to, that I do is, and I hate to use the word discipline, but a discipline policy, like let the drivers know exactly what they are what is expected of them, and then follow through with that. That's really kind of the biggest piece that I see a lot of owners stumbling at is, okay, we got this discipline policy in place. So, a driver goes over his HOS or his hours of service, for one day or whatever. Okay, we'll just let it slide by. No, you can't do that. The implementation of that discipline policy is equally as important as the actual discipline policy. So you have to make sure that, as my old man always said, you have to inspect what you expect. Okay. If you expect these drivers to follow the rules of the FMCSA, you have to inspect it. You have to make sure that they're doing it. And if they're not doing it, this is where the driver coaching comes into play. Making sure that they are understanding what they're doing. And most importantly, and this is what I really try to do, why they have to do some certain things. Because, I'm a millennial. I can admit that. I'm an old millennial, but I still am a millennial. So one of the things that I always ask is why. That's our generation is the why generation. Why do you want me to do this? I'll do stuff, but you have to kind of explain why you want me to do it. So that's what I always try to convey to the drivers is like, okay, why do I need to follow this rule? Why do I need to do that? Well, because these are the repercussions that could come with it. If you are, like I said, let's go back to PC, personal conveyance. Why do I need to drive, or why can't I drive under personal conveyance? Well, it's cheating the system. And if you get caught, you get shut down. And then your CSA score can go up. And, there's layers to all of this. It's like an onion. And so that's what I really try to convey when it comes to policies and procedures is, okay, guys, this is a policy. This is what we expect of you. And this is why we expect you to follow these, because if you don't, this could happen. This could happen. You get your ISS score, your inspection selection system score goes up. Now all of a sudden you're getting pulled into every roadside or way station, everything like that. I mean, it just compounds upon itself. So this is why we're putting this policy in place now, so that we don't have this issue later on.
No, exactly. And I think that, that's got to be at the forefront of everybody's mind, right? Like no matter what, how do I keep my revenue rolling, right? Like how am I out there? How do I make sure my equipment's rolling at as much as possible, whether it's preventative maintenance, doing a lot of these things to make sure that you're not getting shut down for any oversight, right? And again, sometimes experience is the best teacher, right? At the end of the day, sometimes maybe you need to go through it one time, But at the same time, you can listen to a show like this and start implementing a lot of those things, because I look at it, over the next maybe 5-10 years or whatever. And I know that, that the FMCSA, DOT, all of them eventually are going to start digitizing a lot of this stuff out there. And I wouldn't be surprised if they come up with, I know cab cards already used, but utilizing like a cab card, digital cab card system where like when you pull through a scale, it pulls everything from that driver out there to make sure that they're legit and it's going to help them go. Hell, they might even stop using, and there might even be a sensor that's in front of the scale that now you get a notification on your e-log or your ELD that says green light, go. You don't have to stop and everything else. And so again, I think like that's when you become a lot more efficient out there. Are you seeing anything like that? Is there any technology that you're possibly using to help kind of streamline a lot of this stuff for these guys?
Yes, there is a lot of technology out there. That was always one of my biggest complaints with trucking for the longest time, is that we're not utilizing technology. One of the first inside jobs I had was monitoring or tracking trucks and stuff like that, and it was so old, like the methods that we were using. I'm like, there's got to be something better now. Technology, it's been a while since I was doing that, and technology has gotten so much better now. There's so much out there. My biggest thing with technology is, make sure that what you're using, make sure that you're actually keeping an eye on it. Because one of the things that safety guys kind of get in trouble with is we have this piece for this, we have this piece for that, we have all this technology, and they want to implement all of it. But if you're not monitoring it, it can actually, in the long run, come back to bite you. Because if something were to happen and someone says, "Well, you had this technology to keep an eye on that," you're like, "Well, we weren't monitoring it." Then why did you have it in place? I mean, that's going to be the first question they have. Why don't you have someone monitoring it? If it's important enough to you to monitor it with technology, why were you not monitoring it? And that's an awkward question to answer, and one that, again, these lawyers out there and insurance companies, they're very smart and they'll jump on that. But yeah, I can see technology coming out that will really streamline a lot of things. I could see a lot of truck drivers pushing back. I mean, when the e-log system came out, I mean, I don't know how many drivers quit because they didn't want that. And then we had the dash cams. Okay, I don't want dash cams. Now we have internal dash cams. That's the biggest one now. I understand why they have issues with it. I really do. But I mean, that's kind of the progress with it is, okay, we have this technology. Do we want to implement it? Are the guys on the road going to go with that technology? That always seems to be kind of the forgotten piece of technology is, are the drivers going to be willing to play ball with this technology? Because honestly, it's them out there. Like, we can sit in our office all day on our computer and type away and be like, oh, we can see all this information. But a lot of times this technology stuff, they forget about the driver out there, the guy actually living in the truck, moving down the road. Do they want to implement it? Do they want to be monitored in that way? And a lot of times the answer is no. And how can we make that technology beneficial to everyone involved? That's going to be the big question is the technology, because a lot of drivers have come around to external dash cam, dash cams facing out. They've come around to that. But there's still a big issue with the internal stuff. And I know that they don't really like the FMCSA messing around with them. So I don't know what the answer is, to be honest with you. As far as technology, it's a tricky road to travel.
No, absolutely. Right. And I, just as much as everybody, don't want Big Brother watching me 24/7, 365 and everything else. I don't want that. I definitely see the value in external facing cameras and cameras on my equipment. And, I was actually just talking about this yesterday with my guest about that, where like as a broker, I've been in that situation where, a forklift driver loading up a trailer ripped a sidewall, and then they're trying to say, oh, that was there the whole time. And, I feel like at the end of the day, man, you have to protect your assets. Literally, you have to protect your assets because others aren't. You are not their priority. You need to make sure that you are protected because, you've brought up lawyers and stuff a couple of times on the show. At the end of the day, you guys, they hope you have a bad day and they can pin something on you. And ultimately, it's your responsibility to go in there and make sure your stuff is taken care of and you are compliant out there. But Sam, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, man. You were clearly very passionate about this stuff. How does anybody reach out to you to find out more about what you got going on?
You can email me, sam@wattsman.com, WATTSMEN.com. Visit my website, wattsman.com. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm on there quite a bit. And but email me. That'd probably be the best way. And I would love to talk to anybody who wants some help with their safety and compliance.
I love it. Sam, thank you so much for your time. That is going to be it for today, you guys. As always, if you guys got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show, you guys. Share it out there to your network. If you're feeling really ambitious after this one, which you should be, rank the show on iTunes and Spotify, you guys, because that's how it helps it get out there to everybody. Is if you saw value, chances are other people are as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon. We don't have any fancy outro that we do with the intro.